Something is happening inside BYD that is getting harder to ignore. This company is no longer just launching another electric sedan, another family SUV, or another affordable hybrid. It is building an entire automotive universe with sports cars, supercars, giant luxury sedans, hardcore off-roaders, shooting brakes, and performance machines, all coming from the same corporate family. And this is happening at exactly the moment when BYD is preparing for one of China's biggest automotive events of the year. The 2026 Chengdu Auto Show begins on August 21st, and BYD will have its own large group pavilion, alongside the industry's biggest technology-driven brands. There will be plenty of new cars, and they may not all be the 7 you're about to see. But that is exactly the point. BYD is moving so quickly that even before one wave of cars reaches customers, another wave is already arriving. Number 7. BYD SHARK. Let's start with the vehicle that proves BYD isn't interested in attacking only one corner of the automotive market. This is the BYD SHARK, a 5-meter-long, 5-seat pickup powered by BYD's DMO plug-in hybrid architecture. And unlike some of the tiny electric pickups that look like lifestyle accessories, this thing was built to behave like a real truck. It has all-wheel drive, an electric driving capability of up to around 90 kilometers, and a combined system output of 436 horsepower. BYD claims 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 5.7 seconds. 5.7 seconds. For a 5-meter pickup truck, if you're used to the traditional American pickup formula, that's already strange enough. But the Shark's biggest trick is that it doesn't ask you to choose between electric driving and long-distance practicality. You can use the battery for daily driving, then use the gasoline engine and hybrid system when the journey gets serious. It is basically BYD taking the traditional pickup idea and asking, what happens if we stop treating the combustion engine as the only thing that makes a truck useful? The result is a vehicle that can still carry 5 people, still has a truck bed, still has 4-wheel drive, and still gives you around 675 kilometers of claimed total range on a full battery and full tank. And it even supports 6-kilowatt vehicle-to-load power, meaning the truck can become a giant portable power source when you're camping, working at a remote site, or simply running equipment away from a wall socket. And BYD isn't hiding the Shark in China and hoping nobody notices. The company has been pushing it into international markets and gave the pickup prominent exposure at the 2026 Goodwood Festival of Speed, where BYD literally demonstrated it on an off-road course and gave passengers rides. The official BYD material also highlights its 15.6-inch central display, heated and ventilated seats, and head-up display. Because apparently even a pickup truck now has to behave like a premium tech product. And that's what makes the Shark interesting for this list. It isn't necessarily the craziest BYD ever built. It's important because it shows the breadth of the company's strategy. BYD is not waiting for American or Japanese manufacturers to define the next generation of the pickup. It is bringing its own formula into the fight. And there's a slightly uncomfortable question hanging over that. In the American market, a truck like this would have a gigantic audience. It has the space, the stance, off-road capability, and the acceleration. But the vast majority of American buyers cannot simply walk into a local BYD dealership and order one. So you get to watch it on a screen while continuing to drive the same pickup you've already had for years. And that pattern is going to become a little more painful as we move through this list. Number 6, DENZA Z 5. Now we step into the world of luxury off-roaders, and this is where BYD's premium ecosystem starts getting serious. The vehicle is called the BO5, and it sits under DENZA, BYD's premium technology-focused brand. It uses the company's DMO plug-in hybrid off-road architecture, producing 544 horsepower and enough performance to push the big SUV from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in less than 5 seconds. But the number I like more is the one that tells you how this thing was designed to be used. Up to 90 kilometers of pure electric driving and up to 835 kilometers of combined range with a full tank and full battery. And unlike an ordinary crossover pretending to be an off-roader, the BA05 has three electronically locking differentials and BYD's DISIS P intelligent body control system. In other words, it isn't just an expensive SUV with a lot of screens. There is serious hardware underneath it. And then there is the cabin, because Denza clearly decided that being able to crawl over rough terrain wasn't enough. The BA05 can be equipped with an 18-speaker DVLA audio system, along with a technology-heavy cabin designed to make the SUV feel like a luxury product, rather than a compromise between comfort and off-road ability. But the more interesting part is what Denza is doing with the brand itself. BYD is using Denza as a bridge between mainstream vehicles and the kind of high-end machines normally associated with Mercedes, BMW, or Range Rover. That means this isn't simply BYD putting a premium badge on an SUV. It is BYD testing whether its own technology can define what premium means. And the timing matters. The BA05 made its European debut at Goodwood in July, and Denza has already opened orders in France, so this is not a distant Chinese market curiosity. BYD is actively trying to take this technology outside China. The French pricing alone climbs beyond €75,000 depending on trim, which tells you exactly where Denza thinks it belongs. This is where the BYD strategy starts looking different from the old Chinese auto industry. The old idea was build a cheap car, sell it cheaply, improve it over time. The new idea seems to be build the technology, build a brand around it, then move upward until the expensive European players have to start responding. And if you think a 544 horsepower luxury off-roader is already too much for a company known for batteries, just wait. Because the next one isn't trying to beat Range Rover, it's trying to make the flagship sedan look ordinary. Number 5. BYD Da Han. This is the car I would be watching most carefully over the next few weeks, because unlike several models already on this list, the Da Han is entering the market at exactly the moment we're making this video. BYD has positioned it as the first D-segment flagship sedan in its Dynasty lineup, sitting above the existing Han. The official images show a huge, low-slung, fastback-style sedan measuring more than 5.25 meters long, with a 3.13-meter wheelbase. This isn't a normal family sedan that accidentally got bigger. It is BYD building a proper flagship, and then you read the specifications and realize why the car is important. The battery pack can reach roughly 102.3 kilowatt-hours, while the top all-electric range is claimed at up to 1,008 kilometers on the CLTC cycle. That's 4 digits on a mainstream automaker's flagship sedan. The rear-wheel drive version produces up to 370 kilowatts, while the all-wheel drive version adds another motor for a combined 570 kilowatts, or roughly 764 horsepower. Top speed for the AWD version is listed at up to 270 kilometers per hour. And there is a plug-in hybrid version too, with a 1.5-liter turbocharged engine and a 54.5 kilowatt-hour battery. Now here's what makes that 1,008-kilometer figure so dangerous as a marketing number. For years, Chinese EVs were introduced with range figures that sounded impressive, but premium buyers still worried about what happened during winter, long-distance travel, and highway driving. BYD is now saying something very different. This car doesn't merely have good range. It can cross into 4-digit territory on the official test cycle. That changes the conversation, and the technology underneath it is not some experimental battery hidden inside a prototype. The Da Han is built around BYD's Blade battery and the company's newer flash charging strategy. BYD has said its second-generation Blade battery can maintain extremely fast charging performance even under very cold conditions, another area where the company is trying to attack the traditional objections to electric cars. And remember the timing. The Da Han is scheduled to make its public debut at the Chengdu Auto Show beginning August 21st. That's why I would not treat this car as yesterday's news. The public launch is essentially the beginning of the real story. The car will get better footage, better interior coverage, more exact pricing, and a mountain of official promotional material. But imagine being an American buyer watching this. You now have a giant Chinese flagship sedan with up to 1,008 kilometers of claimed range, up to 764 horsepower, and a massive premium car footprint. And the most you can do with that information in most cases is watch another launch video. You don't get the test drive. You don't get the dealership. You get the screen. And that actually brings up something useful. For anyone watching this from the United States, you might not be able to walk into a dealership and buy a car like the Da Han, but you can still get a better look at what's happening inside the car you already own. A tool like the BlueDriver OBD2 scanner connects to your phone and can read diagnostic information from your vehicle, including trouble codes and live data. So if that check engine light comes on, you can have a better idea of what's going on before heading to a repair shop. I've linked it below if you want to check it out. And that is becoming a recurring theme with BYD. Because now, we're leaving the giant sedan behind and moving into something far stranger. Number 4. Fangcheng Bao Formula S GT. This is where the BYD Group stops trying to look sensible. The Formula S GT comes from Fangcheng Bao, BYD's more individualistic brand, and it is a shooting brake. A long roof performance car, low, wide, aggressive, and somehow incredibly practical. Fangcheng Bao introduced the Formula S family with 3 different forms: the regular Formula S sedan, the Formula S GT shooting brake, and the larger Formula SL sedan. The whole idea is essentially one product family with different body shapes for different lifestyles. That might sound like a marketing gimmick until you see the GT, because the problem with most family cars is that manufacturers tend to optimize them toward the same template. A sedan becomes an SUV. The SUV becomes a larger SUV. Eventually, everything has 3 rows and a huge touchscreen. Fangcheng Bao went in the opposite direction. Somebody apparently looked at a modern Chinese performance sedan and said, "What if we put a giant practical rear section on it and made it even more dramatic?" The result is a body style that barely exists in some Western markets anymore. The front is low and aggressive. The body stretches out toward the rear. The stance is wide. The roofline remains sleek instead of becoming a generic crossover. And because it is a shooting brake, it gives the owner considerably more practical cargo space without sacrificing the visual drama that makes people stop and stare. This isn't just another car in the BYD portfolio. It is BYD trying to create something that people actually want, because it is interesting. The Formula S family is scheduled for launch in the third quarter of 2026, and the GT is already appearing in regulatory filings and public testing. More importantly for us, Fangcheng Bao has already released dedicated cinematic material for the SGT, including official hero films built around mountain roads, exploration, and the car's low, aggressive profile. And that footage is important because this car doesn't need a giant specification number to sell itself. The shape does the work. In a video dominated by giant batteries, horsepower figures, and charging speeds, the SGT gives the audience 5 or 10 seconds where they can just look at something beautiful moving through the landscape. That's not filler, that's pacing. But Fangcheng Bao has an even more ridiculous machine sitting in the background: the Formula X performance car concept, which is planned for production around 2027. It uses BYD's performance technology, including an advanced chassis and aggressive aerodynamic package. We don't need to put the concept into our 7-car lineup because the SGT is the real near-term product, but its existence tells you something very important. BYD is not merely filling gaps in the market anymore. It is inventing categories it wants to sell. And the next car is perhaps the strongest proof. Number 3. DENZA Z9S. Remember when 1,000 kilometers of EV range sounded like something that would take another decade? DENZA has just made the conversation even stranger. The new Z9S opened pre-sales on August 3rd, starting at 319,800 yuan, roughly $47,000. DENZA is positioning it as a technology luxury smart sedan, And the most aggressive version of the car carries BYD's second-generation Blade battery, the company's newest fast-charging technology, and the God's Eye 5.0 assisted driving system as standard. And then comes the number, 1,100 kilometers. DENZA says the Z9S has a CLTC range of up to 1,100 kilometers, which would make it the longest range mass-produced all-electric vehicle in that particular measurement category. The range versions are 780, 920, and 1,100 kilometers, depending on configuration. All of them use a 102.3 kilowatt-hour battery pack, and if you choose the performance version, you get 3 motors and a combined 890 kilowatts of power. That's roughly 1,194 horsepower. 0 to 100, 2.68 seconds. Read those numbers together, and the car becomes absurd. You can have a sedan capable of nearly 1,200 horsepower and almost supercar acceleration. And you can also choose a version whose headline is basically, "Charge me less often than you think." It is the exact kind of contradiction that Chinese automakers have become extremely good at. A vehicle can be efficient and insane at the same time. And then there is the charging. DENZA says the Z9S can go from 10 to 70% in 5 minutes and from 10 to 97% in 9 minutes under the company's flash charging conditions. 9 minutes. That is the kind of number that changes the argument around EV ownership. Because suddenly, charging isn't necessarily an interruption. It can become closer to the time you spend buying a coffee, stretching your legs, and getting back in the car. The Z9S is also equipped with rear-wheel steering, giving it a claimed minimum turning radius of 4.75 meters plus D'Souza intelligent air body control. So the car is huge, powerful, fast, and technologically complicated, yet it is also supposed to be easy to maneuver in tight spaces. That combination is exactly what luxury car buyers are asking for now. Enormous interior space without enormous difficulty driving the car. But the thing I find most revealing about the Z9S is its price, starting around 319,800 yuan. In America, a car with almost 1,200 horsepower, advanced driver assistance, air suspension, rear-wheel steering, and 1,100 kilometers of claimed range would not be entering the market at anything resembling ordinary premium sedan money. And yet here it is, and you can already pre-order it. So perhaps the most uncomfortable question is not whether BYD can build impressive cars. It clearly can. The uncomfortable question is how long traditional luxury automakers can keep charging dramatically more for technology that Chinese companies are pushing further down the price ladder. And if you thought the Z9S was the climax, I haven't shown you the car that makes this entire BYD story feel almost unfair. Number 2, BYD Seal 08. Because sometimes the most important car isn't the one with the biggest horsepower number. It's the one that makes a crazy technology feel normal. The Seal 08 launched in July as the flagship sedan of BYD's Ocean lineup, starting at 196,900 yuan, roughly $29,000. And this is where the BYD strategy becomes almost impossible to ignore. The company isn't putting flash charging on an ultra-expensive special edition. It is making flash charging standard across the entire Seal 08 lineup. Both the battery electric and plug-in hybrid versions use BYD's second-generation Blade battery, while the BEV version uses an 800-volt high-voltage platform and offers up to 905 kilometers of claimed CLTC range. 5 minutes of charging can add around 400 kilometers of claimed range. And if that wasn't enough, the PHEV version can claim up to 1,660 kilometers of combined CLTC range. The all-wheel drive electric version can produce 510 kilowatts, around 634 horsepower, and accelerate from 0 to 100 in 3.3 seconds. So once again, BYD is refusing to put the car into one category. Efficient? Yes. Fast? Yes. Long range? Yes. Fast charging? Yes. Premium? Yes. And somehow, the starting price is still below 200,000 yuan in China. This is exactly why the Seal Zero 08 matters more than another flashy concept. A 1,600 horsepower supercar is easy to dismiss as a toy for rich enthusiasts. A massive 1,100 kilometer sedan can be dismissed as an expensive flagship. But a car starting around $29,000 that carries fast charging, a large battery, advanced driver assistance, and premium chassis technology? That's different, because technology only changes the industry when it becomes affordable enough to spread. BYD has reached that point with several technologies at once, and the company isn't even treating the Seal Zero 08 as a one-off showcase. The model became the vehicle behind BYD's 17 millionth plug-in vehicle production milestone at its Xi'an plant. Think about that. The 17 millionth BYD plug-in vehicle wasn't some tiny commuter car chosen at random. It was a newly launched flagship Seal '08. The symbolism is almost too perfect. The same company that spent years building volume is now using that volume to push more advanced technology into increasingly expensive cars, then using the scale of the company to bring that technology downward again. And that's why I'd pay attention when BYD talks about flash charging, because we're not simply talking about one car charging quickly, we're talking about an ecosystem where the company wants charging infrastructure, batteries, power electronics, and vehicle design to work together. At Goodwood, BYD demonstrated technology capable of charging its Blade Battery 2.0 from 10 to 70% in 5 minutes under the company's stated conditions, putting the emphasis firmly on reducing the time EV owners spend waiting. Now, so you imagine being someone in the United States who hears all of this. You may already own a perfectly good electric car. It might have good range, might charge reasonably quickly. You might even love it. But then you watch a $29,000 Chinese sedan on your screen that can claim 905 kilometers, uses 800 volts, adds hundreds of kilometers of range in minutes, and can hit 100 in a little over 3 seconds. And you realize the technology race isn't slowing down. It is getting cheaper, which means there is only one car left. And this is where BYD stops looking like a company building future cars and starts looking like a company building a completely different automotive category. Number 1, DENZA Z. This is the one. The DENZA Z is the moment where you can finally forget all the old assumptions about what BYD is supposed to build. Because this is not a cheap EV, it is not a practical family crossover. It is not a hybrid pickup. It is not an executive sedan. It is a full electric supercar from DENZA, the premium technology-focused brand within BYD Group, and it produces 1,604 horsepower. 1,604 horsepower, and the acceleration figure is even more ridiculous, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 1.96 seconds. Not 3.9, not 2.9. 1.96, that puts the DENZA Z into territory where your body reacts before your brain does. And BYD didn't stop with raw power. The Z uses a triple motor E-cubed sports car platform, giving the company independent control over the car's behavior at the wheels. It also gets the kind of advanced suspension technology and performance control that DENZA wants to turn into a genuine supercar experience rather than a giant electric motor bolted into a pretty body. And the charging number is almost comically appropriate for a car like this. DENZA says the Z can charge from 10 to 97% in just 9 minutes using its flash charging system. 9 minutes for almost the entire battery window. And because this is DENZA, not a stripped down track special, the car comes with 4 seats. You can get the Z as a coupe, a spider, or a racing version with a special edition prepared specifically for the Nürburgring Nordschleife. That last detail is important because BYD isn't treating this car as a technology demonstration that exists only to make headlines in China. The DENZA Z made its public global debut at the Goodwood Festival of Speed in July, where the coupe and racing versions were revealed publicly by BYD Executive Vice President Stella Li and former Formula One champion Jenson Button. The car was also part of a huge BYD Group presence featuring BYD, DENZA, and Yangwang models, all running under the same corporate umbrella. And that is why I would put the Z at number 1. Because look at the path we just traveled. We started with a pickup. Then BYD's premium brand gave that pickup philosophy to a luxury off-roader. Then BYD built a flagship sedan capable of claiming more than 1,000 kilometers of range. Then Fangchengbao built a shooting brake because, apparently, there weren't enough interesting shapes on the road. Then DENZA built a luxury sedan with 1,194 horsepower and 1,100 kilometers of claimed range. Then BYD turned fast, charging into something approaching mainstream equipment. And finally, the same corporate group built a 1,604 horsepower electric supercar that can reach 100 in under 2 seconds. That's not a normal product lineup. That's an attack on the entire assumption that a company should specialize in one kind of vehicle. The interesting part is that BYD has built an ecosystem large enough to experiment in all of these categories at the same time. It can take battery technology developed at enormous scale and put it into an entry-level car. It can take advanced electrical architecture and charging technology and put it into a flagship. It can take performance systems and spin them into a supercar. It can take off-road technology and build a luxury brand around it. It can create a separate brand for individualistic vehicles. And then, when one idea works, the technology does not stay trapped in that one model. It spreads. That's how technology stops being a gimmick and becomes an advantage. And this is why I think the next few months matter so much. The Chengdu Auto Show begins on August 21st and runs through August 30th, with nearly 120 brands and around 1,600 vehicles expected across the event. BYD has its own group pavilion, and the company's recent product cycle means there will be plenty of opportunities for another surprise. The Da Han is already scheduled for its public debut there, but BYD's booth could reveal more vehicles or new versions that aren't part of this list, so the 7 cars we've covered today may not actually be the end of the story. That is the scary part, because when a manufacturer is launching a 1,604 horsepower supercar, a 1,100 kilometer luxury sedan, a 1,008 kilometer flagship EV, and a 436 horsepower hybrid pickup within the same product cycle, you can't really call the company one thing anymore. It's not just an EV maker. It's not just a Chinese automaker. It's not just a battery company. And it's definitely not the BYD that people outside China remember from 10 years ago. BYD is becoming a technology company that happens to build cars. And for American buyers, that creates a particularly frustrating situation. Because the technology is visible, the cars are real, the numbers are public, the videos are everywhere. You can watch the DENZA Z fly up a racetrack. You can watch the Shark attack an off-road course. You can watch the BAO 5 climb where normal crossovers shouldn't go. You can watch the Da Han push toward a 4-digit range figure. You can watch the Z9's claim 1,100 kilometers and almost 1,200 horsepower. You can watch the Seal 08 charge at speeds that would have sounded impossible a few years ago. But you still can't simply walk into a dealership in most of America and buy them. So while one part of the world is watching these cars become normal, another is being told to wait. And that's probably the most important takeaway from this entire list. The future isn't coming. Somebody already built it. The real question is how long the rest of the world is going to spend watching it through a screen.